Let's transition and let's go to the Queen City as the 3-1 Seattle Seahawks are traveling to Cincinnati to take on the 2-3 Cincinnati Bengals as the Bengals are favored by 3 points. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff at Paycor Stadium. The over-under for this matchup is 44.5 points. So, when I look at this Seahawks versus Bengals matchup, honestly, when I looked at the schedule for week 6, this was my most exciting matchup and the matchup that I was looking forward to watching the most on the slate of games in week 6. This was the matchup between the Seahawks and the Bengals, a game where I'm like, I got to watch that game start to finish because I feel like these two teams are equivalent at the moment and are two teams who are very good football teams. But let's start off with the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, the Seahawks are led by Geno Smith, and this season, Geno Smith has 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, 846 passing yards. He's completing 68% of his passes. I feel like when you look at Geno Smith, since he's been in Seattle, Geno Smith has revitalized his career. Look at Geno Smith and his 24 starts with the Seahawks. Geno Smith is averaging 238 passing yards per game. He has 39 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. His average yards per pass attempt is 7.4. He's completing 70% of his passes, and his passer rating is 101.2. I look at Geno Smith the same way I look at a Jared Goff. I feel like Jared Goff, when he's at his best, Jared Goff is a good quarterback. You can include Geno Smith in that conversation now because Geno Smith, since he's been in Seattle, he protects the football better. He's more of a leader among men, and him being in a better situation in Seattle has really, really helped his career. I'm looking at Geno Smith numbers, and when he was in New York, rookie season, 2013, 12 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. 2014, 13 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So in New York, he turned the football over a lot. And since he's been in Seattle, he has protected the football. In 2021, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, 702 passing yards. He only had a few starts in 2021. But last year, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He led the NFC in touchdown passes. So give Geno Smith credit for his ability to protect the football. And I look at this Seahawks offense. Obviously, you got DK Metcalf, you got Tyler Lockett. Both receivers had over 1,000 yards receiving last year. I love that 1-2 punch at the receiver position for the Seattle Seahawks. And at running back, you got Kenneth Walker III. I thought Kenneth Walker III had a tremendous rookie season, and he did a great job last year in his rookie year. Last year, Kenneth Walker, he had 228 carries, 1,050 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns, averaging over 4.5 yards per carry. He is a X factor for this Seahawks offense because of his ability to run between the tackles, and he creates mismatches as well for opposing teams because he can also catch the ball out of the backfield. He can also catch the ball out of the backfield, and that's something that the Seahawks haven't had consistently since Marshawn Lynch. That's something that they haven't had since Marshawn Lynch. And so I feel like Kenneth Walker, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett, that trio has helped the Seahawks become one of the better teams in the NFC. And when I think about the Seattle Seahawks, coming into the season, everyone knew the favorites in the NFC were the 49ers and the Eagles. And then people said, the team that could possibly challenge the Niners or the Eagles were the Cowboys. That's what everybody said. Oh, the Dallas Cowboys are the biggest threats to the Niners and to the Eagles. I am here to tell you today, heading into week 6, it is not the Dallas Cowboys who are the biggest threats to the Niners or the Eagles. It is the Seattle Seahawks, because the Seattle Seahawks are well coached. Pete Carroll is one of the more proven head coaches in the NFL. Geno Smith has elevated himself into that good quarterback conversation. He's not elite. We know Geno Smith is not Justin Herbert or Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, or Patrick Mahomes, but Geno Smith is a good quarterback. He's good like Jared Goff. Jared Goff will never be elite, but Geno Smith and Jared Goff are both good quarterbacks. And so I look at this Seahawks football team. I think that they are the biggest threats to the Niners and the Eagles in the NFC. And you look at their statistics. Statistically, they haven't been great, especially on offense. They only average 336 total yards per game. That's ranked 20th in the NFL. But they do average 28 points per game. That's ranked 6th in the NFL. And in the first 4 weeks of the season, the Seahawks had 21 or more points in 3 out of their 4 games in the first 4 weeks of the season. They had 24 against the Giants. They could have scored more, but they took their foot off the gas pedal. They had 37 against the Panthers in week 3. They had 37 as well against the Lions in week 2. And their only bad game of the season came in week 1. The biggest shock of week 1 was the Rams beating the Seahawks in Seattle. They only scored 13 in that matchup. But going into that week 2 matchup, I remember telling everybody, Vegas had the Lions favored by like 6 over the Seahawks. And I said, this is ridiculous. Seattle, to me, they are better than Detroit is. But I will say, to Detroit's credit, I think the Lions and the Seahawks are on the same level. And then you have the Niners and the Eagles. And I'll throw the Cowboys in there as well. Cowboys, Lions, Seahawks are on the same level. And then there's the Niners and the Eagles. They're better than everyone in the NFC, probably in the NFL right now. But I think Seattle, they are the biggest threats to those top 2 teams. And even defensively, I love their defense and how they play on defense. Obviously, Devon Witherspoon had a tremendous performance in the week 4 matchup against the Giants. He was tremendous in that game. Let me pull up some of these stats from Devon Witherspoon, because he was great in that game. Witherspoon was balling. He had 2 sacks. He had an interception return for a touchdown, 4 pressures. Devon Witherspoon had a sensational performance in the Monday night matchup against the Giants to end week 4. But defensively, you look at this Seahawks football team. At linebacker, you got Bobby Wagner. We know Bobby Wagner is Mr. Reliable. He left the Seahawks organization, went to the Rams, came back, and he's still playing at a high level. He is obviously their leader, but you still got Jordan Brooks. You got Devin Bush. So they got depth at linebacker in their secondary. They're going to get back Jamal Adams. You got Condre Diggs. He had an interception in the week 4 game against the Giants as well. And up front, you got Draymond Jones, Jaron Reed, Mario Edwards Jr. I like this Seahawks defense. I really, really do. Now, defensively, statistically, they're not great. They give up 393 total yards per game. That's ranked 26th in the NFL. But they are great against the run. They only give up 88 rushing yards per game. That's ranked 6th in the NFL. So I like this Seahawks football team. I like the way they've been playing. And this is going to be a tough matchup for the Bengals. Now, when I look at the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 1,045 passing yards. He's completing 62% of his passes so far this season. I felt like watching the Week 5 game against the Arizona Cardinals, what I was impressed with the most wasn't Joe Burrow and his performance necessarily from a statistical standpoint. It wasn't his stats that made me feel like the Bengals have hope. It was how he was moving. If you're a Bengal fan and you watch that Week 5 game against the Cardinals, you don't even care about how Burrow looked from a stat standpoint. You care about how he moved from a mobility standpoint. And in week 5, Joe Burrow was mobile for the first time this season. He was able to kind of manipulate the pocket, and he was able to move up in the pocket a few times. He delivered some darts to Jamar Chase. And that was the first time this season where I felt like that's the Joe Burrow I know. So Bengal fans, they had to feel optimistic after that game against the Cardinals, not because of Joe Burrow's statistics, but because of his mobility. And so that's going to be important in this matchup. And as the season goes along, quite frankly, because if Joe Burrow's not able to manipulate the pocket and not able to be mobile within the pocket, the Bengals have no chance at being able to make the playoffs. But they played well against the Cardinals, and Joe Burrow looked good for the first time this season from a mobility standpoint. The Cavs didn't seem like it was an issue at all. In that game, he went 36 of 46, 317 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Jamar Chase, Mr. 7-Eleven, he is always open. He had 15 receptions, 192 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. So the Bengals, they're going to get back T. Higgins, and T. Higgins is very important to this Bengals offense because if you have T. Higgins in the lineup, you can't double Jamar Chase. And I love the trash talk between Jamar Chase and Weatherspoon. I love the trash talk that we've heard this week. We've been hearing some trash talk between Devon Weatherspoon and Jamar Chase. I love that. But the good thing for the Bengals is they're going to get back T. Higgins. And if you got T. Higgins in the lineup, you can't double Jamar Chase because T. Higgins can make a play on the other side. He can make a play on the other side. Now, one of the things that I want Zach Taylor to do more of, and I said this last week and I'm going to say it again, the Bengals need to run the football more with Joe Mixon. This year, the Bengals are averaging 75 rushing yards per game. That's ranked 31st in the NFL. That's not going to get it done. That's not going to get it done. Against the Rams on a bad calf, Zach Taylor had Joe Burrow drop back to pass 49 times. 49 times on a bad calf. You have to run the football more with Joe Mixon. Hand the ball off to Joe Mixon. This year, Joe Mixon has 84 carries, 328 rushing yards, averaging close to 4 yards per carry, only 1 touchdown. He needs more opportunities in this Bengals offense. I know you have elite weapons like Jamar Chase, like T. Higgins, like Tyler Boyd. I say it all the time. The Bengals might have the best trio of receivers in the NFL with Boyd, Chase, and Higgins. But you have to run the football and not be a one-dimensional football team. We know Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. When he's healthy, he's top 5 in my eyes, but you have to run the football more with Joe Mixon. And I feel like this year, Joe Mixon has ran the football effectively, and he's running harder this year. See, in previous years, there were Bengal fans who wanted Pirine, the running back now for the Denver Broncos. They wanted Pirine to get more carries than Mixon because Pirine ran the football harder and he ran with force. This year, Joe Mixon is running the football with force, and he's running in between the tackles and making guys miss. And so you have to depend on the running game if you want to be a true contender in the AFC. Now, defensively, they are led by defensive coordinator Lou Admiral. And to me, this year, the Bengals defensively, they have not been as good this season like they were in 2021 and 2022. And statistically, the defensive stats back it up. The Bengals defense, they give up 368 total yards per game. That's ranked 22nd in the NFL. They struggle to stop the run. They give up 154 rushing yards per game. That's ranked 31st in the NFL. They give up 23 points per game. That's tied for 19th in the NFL. And teams are able to convert on 41% of their third downs against that Bengals defense. That's ranked 21st in the NFL. That's not going to get it done. That's not going to get it done. And Bengal fans, they get mad when I tell the truth about this Bengals football team defensively. The Bengals, in their first 4 weeks of the season, the Bengals gave up 24 or more in their first 4 weeks of the season. Well, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. In week 3, they only gave up 16 to the Rams. But the Rams didn't have Cooper Kupp. The Rams had offensive line issues. I was wrong. They gave up 16 points to the Rams. But in 3 out of their 4 games, in the first 4 weeks of the season, the Bengals gave up 24 or more points. They gave up 24 to Deshaun Watson in week 1. They gave up 27 to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in week 2. And they gave up 27 to Ryan Tannehill. And so they're not an elite defense. Right now, they're not a good defense. Now, they got playmakers defensively. Up front, you got DJ Reader, okay? I love their pass rush with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard. And at linebacker, you got Logan Wilson. He's one of the more underrated linebackers in the NFL. You still got Jermaine Pratt. But I got my questions about that Bengals secondary, specifically Nick Scott. I feel like Dax Hill has played well. Dax Hill has played well so far this season, but not Nick Scott. He's had some struggles on the back end in coverage for the Bengals. But you still got Cam Taylor-Britt. You still got Awuzie, who's trying to get back into a rhythm because he's fresh off that season-ending injury last year. But that Bengals defense, they're not good. They are a below-average defense at the moment, but this is going to be an opportunity for the Bengals to play well against a quality opponent because you beating the Bengals beating the Cardinals, in my eyes, doesn't qualify for them to say we are officially back. But I look at the Bengals schedule over the next 3 weeks. The Bengals have the Seahawks in week 6. Week 7, they have a bye. Week 8, they have the 49ers off the bye week. And then week 9, they have the Bills. And this is going to be the stretch of the season that determines whether or not the Bengals make the playoffs. Because you can't go 0-3 in this stretch. You cannot fall to 2-6 as you head into that'll be week 10, I believe. You can't do it. So it's going to be really, really important for the Bengals to try to beat the Seahawks, because I feel like if the Bengals can beat the Seahawks, they can beat the Bills. I don't think they're going to beat the 49ers under any circumstances. They're not on the 49ers level at the moment. But if they can beat the Seahawks in week 6, you'll feel good about their chances to beat the Bills in week 9. But these next 3 games are going to determine whether or not the Bengals are a playoff contender in the AFC. If they can go 2-1 in this 3-game stretch, they'll still be in the mix and they'll be competing for a playoff spot. If they go 1-2, that's tough. If you lose to the Seahawks and the Bills, if you lose to the Seahawks and Bills, you're going to go 0-3 because you're not beating the 49ers. But if you beat the Seahawks and you lose to the Bills and the Niners, that's not going to be bad. You still have a chance at 3-5, maybe. But these next 3 games is going to be pivotal for the Bengals. But with all that being said, even though I feel like at their best, these 2 teams are equivalent, right now, the Seattle Seahawks are a better football team than the Bengals are. So I'm rolling with the Seattle Seahawks to beat the Cincinnati Bengals at Paycor Stadium 27-24.